Hello and welcome back to the Grandmaster division of the International Championship. In the last video we have taken a look at one of my 4-player games of the season, and I managed to finish second at the end in that one. And then we also have taken a look at the standings after 3 games finished for me. Not the greatest situation for me. I'm at 6 points at the moment at the 5th place, but it's also not completely horrible. So I'm a position where a lot is still possible. However, Cengiz, after 4 games finished, has already scored 20 points, so catching up to him might be quite challenging, and I might have to orientate myself in the direction of not getting relegated instead of maybe fighting for first place or fighting for the medals. But 4 games have still to be played, so a lot is still possible. And the game that we are taking a look at today is a 3-player game against Grozz and Funestus. As you can see in the standings, those are the 2 other players who have 3 games finished. Grozz at the moment with 1 more point than I have, while Funestus is 2 points behind me. So that is quite an important game for me to just not fall too much behind. If Funestus now, for example, wins this game, I lose the game, I out of a sudden am in the relegation spots, and things then could be looking challenging for me. So an important game, and now without further ado, we are going to take a look at the game. In this game I'm playing in the 3rd position, and first of all we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. We have some lab leaders in H3 with Bill Gates, Marie Curie and Sid Meier. Also Steve Jobs is there. There's the space flight, so definitely some payoff cards in that direction. We also have Fleming and Chaplin for some theaters no G. However, there's no Hollywood, no internet. We then have Mandela, but no Pierre. There is the Red Cross, which is important, but no Gandhi, no Churchill, no Manhattan Project. In H2 we have a Suez Canal, but no James Cook. There is no ocean liner service. We have a bunch of cultural leaders with Bach, Darwin, Shakespeare and Antoni Gaudi, so it might be important to at least be prepared to potentially go into that direction. We also have the 2 science leaders with Newton and Nobel, and then Robespierre to maybe get a government form going cheaply. In H1 we have the 2 strength wonders with Great Wall and the Meiji Castle. We have the Machu Picchu, and then the 2 happy face illusion wonders with Forbidden City and St. Peter's Basilica. We have no military action leader in H1. We have Nostradamus and Genghis Khan to help with the strength. We have Michelangelo with potentially some interesting wonders like St. Peter's Basilica or Machu Picchu. We have Leonardo da Vinci, but no Gutenberg. Columbus, Isabella can maybe work nicely for a colonization setup. And then I think Nostradamus I already mentioned. Alright, Funestus is playing in 1st position. I think his pick is relatively straightforward. He will just go for Hammurabi. And Grozz, I will go for Ashoka without any wonder in the row. That's probably the better pick than committing to Homer here. And now I have to make a decision. It's an interesting row in the sense that there was not a single wonder on the row. All of the wonders are still in the deck, and the 2 leaders that are left for me now are actually both leaders that kind of need an HA wonder to work somewhat nicely. So the question was, do I want to commit to one of those, or do I maybe just want to take the engineering genius? And if I want to commit to one of those, which is the one I rather want to commit to? I could potentially just take the engineering genius. Maybe I could get Boudica, Aristotle. There are some solid leaders that I could get, and both my opponents already have committed to a leader, so there's no contention. But not knowing at all what leader and what wonder I will be getting just felt not that great, and also just taking engineering genius and is I think also not the greatest first pick, especially in one of the later seeds where you often have the chance to take multiple cards. So at the end I decided that I am willing to go for one of those leaders, and then it was a somewhat clear decision for me that I actually want to go for Homer here. That has 2 reasons. First of all, the yellow card that I can take together with him is just, I think, the better one compared to the frugality. I think getting this rich land before having built a 3rd mine just as after the engineering genius, maybe the best HA yellow card that you can get, depending on the situation. The urban growth can be better to build a 2nd lab first. But yeah, that's just the better yellow card, I would say. And then maybe more importantly, with taking Homer and the Rich Land, I take 2 cards that aren't on a discard spot, while with Cleopatra and Frugality, the Frugality would come from the discard spot, meaning 1 less card would be revealed, and in a situation where I'm really somewhat dependent on maybe getting a wonder, I think it's important to maximize my chances of a lot of wonders being revealed, and with that, at the end I went with Homer and the Rich Land only giving one resource less than the Engineering Genius, but I have already a leader, and I actually like Homer. He's obviously not the greatest, not the strongest HA leader, but I think he is very solid. And if I should get any of those wonders, apart from maybe Hanging Garden, Stonehenge also wouldn't be that ideal, then I think I would be somewhat happy. And even with taking 2 cards that aren't in the discard spot, the Engineering Genius still stays on 2 civil actions, which is important. Otherwise, maybe that could have been a reason for Cleopatra. Hammurabi, Funestus goes for Hammurabi, builds a mine. He could commit to one of those wonders for 2 civil actions now, but he goes for the Engineering Genius, which I think is probably the correct choice, because there are some very strong wonders coming down the row, and then he can just take one of those for 1 civil action at the next turn, while also securing himself the Engineering Genius. Grozz isn't willing to pay an additional civil action for either library or pyramids, just goes for Stonehenge, especially with Ashoka. You have to be careful about paying additional civil actions. Of course, now the Stonehenge costs an additional civil action, but you can maybe pay that cost a little bit later on at the time when it's the most suitable for you. And also I wasn't willing here to pay an additional civil action for any wonder. Of course, the pyramids are quite nice to have. Also maybe the wonder that pairs the best with Homer, making the civil action that you don't get back when you replace Homer less of a burden to pay, and also having no happy face yet, making the happy face from Homer quite valuable. But the library is just also quite strong, and there also are not really any hate drafting reasons involved here, because if I take the pyramids, then Funestus can either get the library or maybe even better the Rome roads, which he can with the Engineering Genius and Hammurabi even just take and finish immediately. So I at the end just went for the library, increasing my population and electing Homer. I draw 2 cards, the Foray and the Trade Routes Agreement. Funestus will choose the Roman roads over the pyramids, most likely because he just allows him to spend his civil actions more efficiently this turn. He can just finish the wonder, he has now all of the civil actions out of the way, and I think that's quite a strong start for him. Now it's Grozz's turn. He seeds the first event into the deck. The development of settlement has been revealed. He builds the second lab, takes the monarchy, the irrigation has the full Ashoka bonus going now, and with the monarchy he also has something to invest the science of the Stonehenge into. Now it's my turn. I also see the Foray. Of course, I don't have a tactic yet. I don't know for certain whether I will be one of the 2 strongest, but with having Homer, I have an additional happy face and I have additional resources for the military. So I was hoping that with that advantage, I should have a decent chance of becoming one of the 2 second strongest, especially because one of my opponents is actually Hammurabi. So I was willing to push here, also because there's a chance maybe the 2 resources could be revealed and I could finish the library. It's maybe not even the most important reason, because there are actually some interesting cards in the row, so having to spend 3 civil actions in the library might not even be the greatest here, but nonetheless I was willing to see the development of civil life has been revealed. I use it here to build a second lab at a 1 resource discount. I take a breakthrough, which is a great card to get for 1 civil action. I also take the swordsman, allowing myself to maybe use Homer's resources nicely, and also just getting a military technology for 1 civil action is definitely not bad. And then I actually also decided to go for Isabella here, because with Homer I just need a leader at some point. The other ones could be late, could be contested. Now I have a chance to get a solid leader for 1 civil action. Isabella, not the greatest, but I get her for 1 civil action, and there is a Suez Canal in the game, meaning that if I can maybe turn this into a colonization game, then she can actually maybe shine even a little bit. So I just wanted to take her here. And then with the last civil action, I build a step of the library, already getting start building on my wonder. Maybe if some additional resources are revealed, it could mean that I am able to finish the library, elect Isabella, and then maybe also develop Swordsman to maybe start use Homer's resources one more time. So for that, for example, it could be important to already have built the first step. And if I take another card, I also have a full hand, so I think I have to build that one step. And I could have taken the Ridgeland instead of Isabella, but I rather wanted to commit. I wanted to have a leader in hand for certain now and use the opportunity to take 1-for-1 civil action. Then I draw the immigration and a colonization card. Funestus takes the Ridgeland, the Code of Laws, the Iron, and then increases his population. Grozz seeds and opens the development of trade routes, the one additional resource, thanks to having saved one with the Ridgeland and with the development of civil life, will now allow me to finish the library at the next turn if I would like to do it. That Grozz, with the development of trade routes, can, after building 2 steps of the Stonehenge, develop the monarchy, going up to 5 civil actions. He also takes the theology, having the full Ashoka bonus again. Interestingly, takes it over the bread and circuses, but without Pierre in the game. I do think that's a reasonable choice. I do think the theology can be stronger then, and with that he ends his turn. I seed the immigration into the deck. I have the happy face from Homer. Grozz, of course, will get the happy face from the Stonehenge, but I have knowledge about the event, and I was hoping that I will manage to be one of the players to get the additional population. The development of markets are revealed, which I will use to gain 2 additional resources out of. I then finish the library. I developed a swordsman so that I can use Homer's resources nicely to get into an H1 unit. Of course, I could also take the knights, maybe wait until I know what tactic I will be getting. But yeah, it just feels better to invest into swordsman now instead of just building another warrior. And at least there's the Great Wall in the game, maybe a wonder that I could take, for which the swordsman now may be fine. And so at the end I was just fine with committing to the swordsman here, and I won't even take those knights and just hope that I will be able to work with the swordsman. Then I have 1 civil action left, and I decide to go for Isabella already, just increasing my resource production already. Of course, I also will upgrade a warrior to swordsman. Of course, I could also keep Homer, maybe use his resources again, but depending on what options I have at my next turn, maybe I don't necessarily want to spend some resources and to make use out of Homer's extra resource again. So it just felt better to get a resource from Isabella. And I also need to get out of corruption, so otherwise I might have to increase my population. I could also build an additional swordsman instead of just upgrading one, but then I really would need to increase my population instead of electing Isabella, because I then would be punished if development of warfare or religion are the if one of them is the last development. So at the end it felt like a good solution for me. I draw 1 card, the border conflict, so I have an event to push if I want to get my foray out. The development of warfare is revealed, so it's important that I have the tree population lying around now. Funestus making sure that the event deck is flipped now. He develops the iron, that increases his population, and interestingly even builds a 4th mine. So an interesting choice by him, really going into big resource production here. And then he also takes the thing that he can invest all of those resources into the Amici Castle, which he potentially can already finish at the next turn. An interesting choice to build an additional mine. He doesn't have any additional happy face sources. He has the additional yellow token from the Rome roads, but nonetheless he could potentially get punished. But on the other hand, again, then the Magic Castle is of course helping him to defend himself and maybe be fine with 4 mines for potentially the rest of the game. So that I think makes sense. With going that heavily into resource production, I do think it could have been an interesting line here to actually take Hammurabi and elect him, and then take the Magic Castle for civil action cheaper. And with having that many resources and still some H1 wonders left in the deck, I do think it could have been a strong Michelangelo game, but Funestus decides here to rather leave himself open for one of the other leaders. Grozz doesn't see it, he's the weakest, finishes the Stonehenge, takes Saladin, elects him, develops the irrigation, goes for an upgrade. Interestingly, he's not willing to take the strength from Saladin, indicator that he himself hasn't seeded. any strength events, and with that isn't willing to use his strength, even though, at least during my politics phase, that will make the decision between him being strongest or weakest, and he could get punished for that, because one of the events that I have put into the deck is the foray. So let's see if that one is revealed now. I was willing here to seed the border conflict into the deck, just to potentially win some strength events. I at least have some time to prepare for the border conflict. At this point, I can't, of course, know for certain whether I'm in a good position to win this, but I just wanted to push here. And the event revealed is not the foray, but instead the other event that I have seeded, the immigration, which together with Grozz gives me an additional population, so at least I gain an advantage against funestus. Yeah. Then that turn is somewhat interesting, and I have to think about what to do, because there's basically only one way how I can spend my civil action on my civilization, and that is increasing my population. Of course, potentially I could build a fourth mine, a third farm or something, but I don't think I really want to do this in this position. So after increasing my population, I have 3 civil actions left. The question is what to do with them. Do I just take 2 yellow cards, maybe the rich land, the reserves? Do I take the rich land, the knights, and then maybe also either drama or theology? I mean, the drama could at least be nice to have with all of those culture leaders, so that's not a bad technology in this game, I would say. Nonetheless, just spending 3 civil actions into those 3 cards just didn't feel too great. It could be fine. I could also take the iron for 3 after increasing my population, but now it's already somewhat late. Of course, now it could mean that I miss out on the iron, and it's a game where there's no James Watt in the game, but nonetheless, I'm generally quite fine to just wait for coal, and if it's not very early, I'm not necessarily willing to do to get out of my way to secure myself a copy of iron, so that also could be an option, but didn't feel too great. And at the end, I went for a player that is maybe also quite expensive, but especially now that I've committed to the border conflict, I felt like maybe that's actually a good way to go. And in that line, I actually don't increase my population. Instead, as you can see, I built the swordsman. I upgrade a warrior to swordsman. Now I'm just out of corruption, also thanks to the additional blue tokens from Isabella, and then I will just spend my whole turn to take the Great Wall here. That is, of course, quite expensive. But the thing is, funestus has the Magic Castle, Grozz doesn't have a wonder, has lots of free civil actions, has already 2 infantry units, so I was thinking that if I don't take the Great Wall, there's a decent chance that Grozz will just go for it, and could also potentially finish it quite quickly. There is still a foray coming in this deck. I have now committed to a border conflict in the next deck. I haven't drawn in any infantry tactic yet, and I was just thinking that without a Great Wall, it's definitely questionable whether I will be in a good position to fight for those strength events. And the Great Wall will not only give me at the moment 3, potentially even more strength, but of course also the happy phase will allow me to then put another worker into the military, further boosting the potential strength that I can go for. So I just felt a lot safer about a lot better about my chances to win those upcoming strength events with having the Great Wall, and as the alternatives that I can go for this turn aren't really that great, I at the moment was willing to pay quite a heavy price for that Great Wall, but I do think it's a wonder with a lot of potential, and so I was willing to secure that for myself. Funestus offers a naval trade agreement, wants to get additional blue tokens, but Grozz rejects the pact. Funestus didn't go for Michelangelo at the turn before. We will maybe see now why he did this, as he goes for Genghis Khan and maybe has a fitting tactic for him. He also, interestingly, takes the theocracy here for 2 civil actions, so maybe he's a bit worried about potential strength stuff going on with me going for the Great Wall. Grozz seeds and opens the Crusades. I do win a strength event here that I haven't seeded. I was happy to see that, and gain 4 additional culture. Grozz is now at 0, but he actually lost the 4 culture. It's not one of those situations where he had only 2 culture accumulated and doesn't lose the full 4 culture. Grozz then upgrades another farm, builds a third lab with the additional farm, or with the farm upgrades and the additional happy face from the Stonehenge, he probably will be able to support the third lab, and then he also starts building up some strength, but he again isn't willing to use Saladin for the strength, which again could get punished by a foray, but this time I don't have an event to push, so that can the earliest happen at Funestus' turn. I have this Trade Routes Agreement pact, but I didn't really see a nice way to use it. I have now just enough food to increase my population twice. Maybe afterwards I have one food saved up so that I could maybe use food as resources. But at the end I just didn't want to offer it yet, as it doesn't give me any benefits this turn. And this turn I will increase my population twice to get out of corruption, and this turn after having taken the Great Wall for very expensive, and also the Great Wall is generally an expensive wonder with having 4 steps, I didn't want to take a lot of cards this turn, and rather just wanted to spend my civil actions efficiently, and so I wanted to increase my population twice here. And then the main question for me was, do I already want to build 2 steps in the Great Wall, just being civil action efficient, or do I want to use that masonry, and I could then now take and develop it, and both scenarios I can finish the Great Wall at the next turn for 2 civil actions, leaving me with 2 civil actions to do some other stuff. And yeah, it's the question of whether I have the 3 spare signs to go into masonry, or whether I rather want to save some more signs up in order to have enough for a government form. But with the masonry already giving basically back all of the actions, and then with me not having upgraded any urban buildings yet, I at the end was willing to go for the masonry here. Generally, I think I value the masonry quite a bit more highly over the recent months, and with that I was willing to do this investment. And yeah, I just think frugality, urban growth are not really that much worth for me, and I rather want to have more civil actions at one of the upcoming turns. I draw 2 events, the strategic territory and the inhabited territory, so Isabella maybe could help me win one of those, and because of having drawn those colonies, potentially putting them into the next event deck, I also was willing to accept the naval trade agreement that Funestus is offering to me. I of course checked how much difference does this pact make immediately for his next turn, as maybe his plan could be to actually do a revolution into the theocracy that he was willing to invest 2 civil actions into at the turn before. And I realized that at least for this turn it doesn't really make a big difference for him whether he has the 2 additional blue tokens or not. And there is a Suez Canal in the game, I have drawn those colonies, I have Isabella. At the end I was willing to accept this naval trade agreement, and now Funestus will indeed do a theocracy revolution, switches to Genghis Khan, and then upgrades the mine, and as you can see he has now 3 and now even 4 spare blue tokens, so the 2 ones at least this turn don't help him a lot, but of course might help him at the upcoming turns, especially with this big production. And we can also see now that he has a heavy cavalry tactic, and with that maybe didn't want to go for Michelangelo because he rather wanted to set himself up for Genghis Khan. Grozz Seeds opens the rebellion, no one gets hit by it. For Grozz, a good event to see. He could have also revealed, for example, the foray here. Instead he reveals the rebellion, and we can see that it is quite nice for him, because that allows him to just increase his population this turn without having to be concerned about a potential rebellion coming. He then builds another swordsman, takes the breakthrough, the warfare, and ends his turn again, not willing to take the strength here from Saladin. And yeah, even though of course it might now happen that he misses out on the foray, I think it might just have been the correct decision to just take the civil actions all the time, because over that many turns those civil actions are probably worth more than the foray would give him, even considering the swing that it is that he would win it instead of one of his opponents. So I think he does the right thing here. I think I often see, especially some newer players or maybe not so strong players, take the strength of Saladin just way too often, trying to not be the weakest for events and then just missing out on 4 civil actions and maybe dodging 1 event or something. So I think you either should go from weakest to strongest, or you should really have knowledge about some very bad stuff coming in order to activate Saladin's strength. Now it's my turn. I was of course happy to see that Grozz didn't take the additional strength that allows me to push, and I pushed the strategic territory here. I pushed that one because the Suez Canal could still be a prospect that I want to go for, and for that I maybe want to have a strong H2 colony, and the additional draws from the strategic territory could give me that. Also, I can maybe win it while not dropping too much in strength, so that I'm afterwards also still prepared to maybe having a shot at winning the border conflict. I see it, and the event revealed is still not a fray, so I was hoping that I am at the end not missing out and after that, but I can finish the Great Wall now, so hopefully I should be fine. The Good Harvest giving me 2 food that I at the moment don't need. I can either maybe still use the Trade Routes Agreement or hopefully just win the fray, and then I have just the amount of food that I need and in order to increase my population. I take the Code of Laws here because I just don't want to be stuck on 4 civil actions. I think that can just be very dangerous. I also it can of course be problematic in the sense that I now invest some science and it makes it harder for me to go into an H2 government form. I could also consider just going to monarchy, which also makes it that I immediately get more draws, maybe helping me to win some colonies and be prepared for the Suez Canal, and then I have my government form already going. But one of the things that I check for in such situations is whether Robespierre is in the game, and with Robespierre in the game, and also with both of my opponents actually having already committed to an H1 government form, I felt that it is better to wait for an H2 government form, but I still didn't want to just save up science, especially with not having knowledge about Dark Ages, and wait for the government form. Instead, I just want to increase my civil actions already, and then with the help of Robespierre, maybe an early Nobel or something, or maybe Newton, I hopefully will be able to get into a government form. I developed a Code of Laws, I finished the Great Wall, going up to 9 strength, being prepared for the fray, and with the last civil action I could potentially think about the alchemy, I could also think about the drama. Both of those things are reasonable options for certain. The drama to be prepared for all of those culture leaders, and as I said, with having that many in the mix, it could be important to maybe be prepared for those, or the alchemy in case there isn't anything interesting in the road, and maybe I could just go for alchemy upgrades, but I am prepared to go into coal, I mean, I don't have enough science to go into coal yet, but I can still take a copy. I can go into selective breeding, into scientific method, I can take a government form, maybe prepare a revolution. I think there's just so much stuff that I can do that I didn't want to commit to this alchemy, even though with the masonry those upgrades are quite cheap, and it could certainly be a fine option to just take the alchemy here. It also could be a fine option to take the drama here. But at the end I went for the reserves, which is of course not the most efficient card, but still with having to do a lot of expensive upgrades, maybe wanting to go for the Suez Canal, I felt that every additional resource that I can get could be important to allow myself to get all of the stuff going that I still need to do, because I'm in a position that can potentially be challenging. Normally I try to at least fix 1 or 2 areas to not be overloaded with things that I have to do in H2. I think it might be fine in this situation because I have at least a Great Wall to help me with the strength, and thanks to the library I have some somewhat decent science production. So it could be another argument to maybe just take the alchemy now for 1 civil action so that I can fix my science at a cheap price. But here I rather wanted to wait for the better solutions and was willing to take the reserves to help me with them. I draw a colonization card, which I was happy to see, increasing my chances of winning the strategic territory that I have put into the deck. Funestus only having 1 card in hand, looks like he can't see it, or it isn't an event that he wants to put into the deck. He takes the Forbidden City here, upgrades the mine, will probably have corruption here, but has strong production anyway, and together with the Forbidden City and the Code of Laws, the Theocracy out of the sudden will have, despite the Theocracy, he will have a decent amount of civil actions to work with. Grozz plays the fighting band tactic, which I maybe will be able to copy at some point, as I haven't drawn an infantry tactic myself. Grozz starts upgrading to the iron relatively late, but still he needs to invest his civil action somehow. He takes the wave of nationalism and the cultural heritage. And as you can see, there is actually already the first government form coming down the row, however without Robespierre, so the question is how do I want to prepare for this? I start by seeding the inhabited territory into the deck, now with having drawn this additional colonization card and having Isabella and the additional colonization bonus. I was hoping that maybe I could even potentially win both of those colonies. And also I finally wanted to get that foray out of the deck. So I push here, the foray is revealed. And then it's a bit of a question on how do I want to. There are some interesting cards or options in a row, and which ones do I want to take, and how do I want to do it exactly? Because there's a Harvard College, even together with an Engineering Genius, if I find the civil actions to take both of those cards, um, which could be a fine thing to invest into. It would certainly fix my science income. However, taking the Harvard College here would also make it extremely hard and maybe even impossible to afterwards still go for Suez Canal. Now, with having put 2 colonies into the deck, I kind of wanted to leave myself open for that option. And also, if I go for the Harvard College, I don't find a civil action to take this first copy of cannons, which I have now a chance to take for 2 civil actions. And I have the Great Wall, so having a copy of cannons could just be very important. If I draw the right tactic, could give me some very big strength potential. So with that, I decided against the Harvard College here, and instead, after building a swordsman to get out of corruption and going up to 12 strength so that I'm the strongest and also prepared for the border conflict, I take the cannon, and I also take this Republic, which I can't develop peacefully at the next turn, but depending on what is in the row, I might just be able to do a revolution. And if I build another unit, I then even have a chance to get out of corruption, which is of course not ideal building another swordsman, but on the other hand, there's a border conflict coming, there are 2 colonies coming. I think the situation is not even that bad committing to a 5th swordsman, and with that, maybe a revolution is not that unrealistic. And then I have 1 civil action left. As you can see, I take this patriotism. Again, I could have a chance to take the alchemy, but if there are no interesting options at the next turn, I can just do the revolution, and then in 2 turns there certainly should be something nice to invest into. And if there is something like scientific method in the row or coal, then I can just go into that and don't need to go into alchemy. So again, I didn't want to commit to this alchemy, and instead I went for the patriotism. There's of course also an engineering genius in the row, and especially with my idea of going for the Suez Canal, that might be an interesting card to have. The thing is, I have this masonry, and the engineering genius doesn't work that nicely together with the technology, especially if I maybe hope to go for the Suez Canal. And also, it's not certain that I will go for an H2 wonder. I mean, I still maybe need to go for a lot of upgrades, do this revolution. I would be happy if I maybe somehow will be able to pull it off to go for a strong wonder, but it's not certain. And with that, I was willing to let the engineering genius stay on the row, and instead rather went for a card that gives me some value for certain, and especially with maybe ending up on Republic and still being stuck on 2 military actions, the additional military action of the patriotism could end up being quite important. Then it's funestus' turn. He will not push, sadly. I was hoping to maybe see the border conflict. Instead, he finishes the Forbidden City, going up to 6 civil actions, increases his population, builds a 3rd lab, interestingly, and then ends his turn. Still has just enough food saved up to get another population out. Now it's Grozz's turn. He takes Nobel, certainly a very strong leader to get early in H2, going up to 5 science production, upgrades a mine, builds another swordsman, making it that he isn't the weakest, increases his population now that the rebellion is out. He doesn't have to be concerned about having a bunch of unhappy workers lying around, and he also is even committing to the warfare, making himself the strongest, so he could now even be the one winning the border conflict. Now it's my turn. The question is, do I want to push despite now not being the strongest? And the answer is yes, because of course I could miss out on a border conflict, and my plan this turn was to actually go for a revolution with building a swordsman, so I will be strongest again after my turn. But I not only seeded a border conflict, but also 2 colonies, and I have now 3 colonization cards in hand. With my current amount of military actions, I actually can keep all of them in hand thanks to the library, so the library being quite important here, but still it would be nice to just reveal that card at my turn when I also win the tiebreakers. So while it is maybe not ideal to reveal the border conflict now, it certainly would be good to reveal one of those colonies that I've seeded, and with that I was willing to push the popularization of science into the deck. It's none of my events at the end, but at least the barbarians, who will cost funestus a population. He doesn't have a free one, so maybe he has to lose this mine or one of his warriors, and yeah, I was happy to see this. I do a Republic Revolution. There's no coal, no scientific method, no selective breeding in the row. I have already the cannons, I have swordsmen, so the riflemen are not the highest priority. There is of course the Bach Opera combination, but I think that's not important enough to not go for this revolution. So I just revolt, going up to 8 civil actions, still having a reasonable amount of science left, so that I can go into coal and scientific method hopefully very quickly, and then to get out of corruption I will just build on the swordsman, also making myself the strongest. Thanks to the library I can keep all of the cards in hand, and I even draw a card that I can see it, so that I can maybe push if I see a chance to win the border conflict or maybe one of my colonies. What I was not happy to see is that there's a scientific cooperation pact between funestus and Grozz. Both of them seem somewhat equally prepared for that pact. Funestus being at 7+4, Grozz at 6+5 science income. And so that early in age 2 there's the potential that this pact will accumulate them a lot of value over the course of the game. Funestus starts using the pact by going into Rifleman, which sadly also allows him to become the strongest by just upgrading all his warriors to Rifleman. He indeed lost a mine to the barbarians. Grozz seeds and the Dark Ages are revealed, so now there are only events left in the deck that I have seen. The Dark Ages is not that great, I have not the greatest science income and I lose the most, but at least I still have enough science left to, for example, go into the scientific method if I should have a chance. Grozz upgrades the mine with the efficient upgrade, increases his population, takes the second copy of cannons, and the architecture doesn't develop any technology, but is hoping that Funestus doesn't have an incentive to cancel the pact at the next turn. I sadly am again not the strongest, and this time I also won't get stronger, which then again was another reason for me to just push to maybe at least benefit if one of the colonies are revealed. And there's indeed one of the colonies revealed, and I am able to win it, but I was a bit unhappy about how much I have to pay. Grozz either also having drawn a lot of colonization cards, or maybe it just was willing to bid an army or something, or just wanted to push the price. So yeah, that's quite expensive, but I was still willing to bid that much, paying all of my cards, a swordsman and a resource, and of course I was interested to see what cards I might have drawn, and I have drawn another colony, the Historic Territory 2, not the ideal one for a potential Suez Canal, but I might need the happy faces, and then it's not that bad. The terrorism at the moment isn't looking that great, and this pact of course also most of the times doesn't do anything. Now there are some options for me in the row that I can invest into: a copy of scientific method, selective breeding, coal. The thing is, both of my opponents are on iron, so I don't need to fear that maybe coal is taken away, while the scientific method could potentially be taken by both of them, and also it's available for me for cheaper. And I also felt like it's best to invest into science production first, because I, thanks to the masonry, can go for 2 upgrades this turn. And then I actually have enough science to go for those upgrades while still being able to go into coal at the next turn. If I go for coal first, I then miss the science to go into scientific method at the next turn. So I think that's just the best thing to invest into here. I go for 1 upgrade, and there are also some important cards that I don't want to miss out on: the organized religion, the reserves. I go for another upgrade, and I take the opera. If I don't take the organized religion, then both of those copies are gone. There's a copy of team sports left. But without Pierre in the game, that's not necessarily better than the organized religion, even though it could allow myself to go for Darwin. And there's just a chance with Grozz not having committed to theology yet that he would take the team sports away and that I miss out on a happy face solution. I also wanted to have the opera in hand. There is some synergy for it. At some point maybe I need a way to invest my culture. To invest into culture income, so I could have also, for example, played the reserves for resources, which would allow me to already have enough resources to go for a coal upgrade at the next turn, but I was willing to invest at 1 civil action to be a bit more flexible in what leader I want to go for later on. So I go for taking that opera, and the reserves, of course, for 1 civil action is just a strong card to get here. I draw 2 cards, a colonization card, maybe allowing myself to also bid for the other colony. However, Grozz bid a lot for the strategic territory. I was willing to bid 5, so a swordsman, a card, and a resource. I wasn't willing to make it that I'm in danger of any aggressions. I still wanted to make it that Grozz has to at least pay a little bit. So he wins the colony now for swordsman and 2 cards. Funestus takes this copy of Scientific Method. Increasing his science production will allow him to maybe make even more use out of the Scientific Cooperation Pact. Goes for an upgrade, increases his population twice, which allows him to get out of corruption. Is willing to skip the first copy of Selective Breeding. Grozz seeds, the border conflict is revealed. Sadly, I am not the one to win it, but I'm also not the one to lose it, so that's at least somewhat fine. Grozz has to destroy something, loses the third lab that he built earlier, has a lot of population lying around after having won the Inhabited Territory 1, and this turn he will make use out of the Scientific Cooperation Pact, develops the architecture, develops the theology, builds 2 theologies at a price of 4 resources, rebuilds the swordsman, and then plays the cultural heritage. Now it's my turn. I am one of the 2 strongest, and one of the events that I've pushed into the deck is the Cold War, so I wanted to get that out before Grozz maybe does invest into more military, and I could be a danger of not being part of the event. The question is, what do I want to push? I really don't want to push the terrorism, and if I don't want to push that, I would need to commit to one of those colonies. And I first of all, of course, have to think about which colony I rather want to have in the deck, but also which colony do I rather want to leave for a potential Suez Canal. And maybe I would like to have the strategic territory for the Suez Canal, but the happy faces could actually be useful, as well as the culture, of course, even though it might not be the highest priority yet at the time when I finish the Suez Canal. Nonetheless, the additional draws from the strategic territory might be worth a bit more. The problem is that the historic territory at the time when it will be revealed, probably middle age 3 or something, starts to be quite valuable, the culture that you can get from that, and at the moment, with still being stuck on 2 military actions, it's not that clear how well I will be prepared to win the colony, and while winning the strategic territory is of course also strong in age 3, I felt more comfortable about pushing that one into the deck instead of the historic territory. So I see it and open the popularization of science, which gives me the most culture thanks to having gone for those scientific methods. And in this turn I can go into coal, so I just start my economy upgrades, play the resources, go for an upgrade. There's now one thing that I have to think about, and that is what leader do I want to go for, because the problem is, if I don't take Darwin or Robespierre, those 2 will be gone. Darwin could be a fine leader for me, Robespierre probably not that much, even though the 3rd military action is actually useful for me. But Darwin could be a fine leader, despite not having team spots, there's still a chance I might get it, and I could also be fine with an organized religion maybe, or maybe I do get the Suez Canal with the historic territory too. So Darwin, a fine leader. The 2 leaders that are left in the deck are Newton and Shakespeare. Newton, with having the scientific method, would probably be my preferred choice. The problem is, funestus also still needs a leader, and he might just go for Darwin, but if Newton is revealed before his next turn, he could take Newton away, and the only leader that would then be left is Shakespeare. And at the moment, I'm really not nicely prepared for Shakespeare. I mean, at least I have a copy of Opera in hand, but I have no food income. I can't really go for Shakespeare, or at least not for the urban buildings that he requires nicely at this point, so I could consider just going for Darwin, just making sure that I get a solid leader instead of maybe being stuck with a leader that doesn't do a lot for me. The problem is, for Funestus, if Newton isn't revealed, I think he kinda needs to commit to Darwin, because that would just... then after his turn it should be very likely that Newton is revealed before my next turn, and because of that I felt like I have decent chances to go for Newton here, and taking Darwin for 2 civil actions with having no team spots in hand yet just didn't feel too great. I mean, I likely will get access, I mean, it's not certain if I get access to the team spots. Funestus also still needs a happy face solution. So maybe I should just go for Darwin here. But at the end I actually decided to wait for Newton, hoping that he won't be revealed immediately after my turn, and if he isn't, then I felt like Funestus will just go for Darwin. If he is revealed, maybe Funestus will still go for Darwin, just because he's available for 2 civil action cheaper. But because of the denial aspect, I feared that if Newton is revealed, he might take him away. But I, at the end, was willing to take that risk. I take the selective breeding, as I need to start my food income first. Soon I take the frugality, the engineering genius, and play the reserves for resources. Those 2 yellow cards hopefully will be useful. I was still hoping to get the Suez Canal for the Engineering Genius. With having played the resources now, could potentially even take and finish the Suez Canal if it drops on the row. And the frugality, I have started my food income late. It also means, of course, that it will take a little while until I can use it, but at the time when I will be able to use it, I think it could be a big help for me. I keep the 2 events and the colonization card in hand. I draw 2 aggressions here. Funestus Seeds, as you can see, Newton is revealed, so I was now a bit afraid that Funestus might take him away. The economic progress is revealed, which I was happy to see because I just went into coal. I still don't get the most out of it, but those 6 resources still give me quite a nice boost. And as I feared, Funestus sadly will take Newton away here. Of course, that also makes it that he can even make better use out of the Scientific Cooperation Pact. He will then take the Cavalryman, develops them for free, builds one, upgrades another lab, going up to 10 science income, also remaining the strongest even after having lost Genghis Khan. So I was a bit worried, as now I sadly will be stuck with Shakespeare or no H2 leader. Grozz this turn goes for the justice system. I think an important technology for him to not be stuck on too few civil actions. He then develops the cannons as well, plays the wave of nationalism as long as he's the weakest, builds a cannon, builds another cannon. If he has the correct tactic for that, like a defensive army or maybe also fortifications or Napoleonic army with the cavalryman, he could soon have a lot of strength potential. Even when he loses to 2 yellow tokens to the end of the age, he still has 2 free populations, so I was a bit worried about all of this. He then takes the urban growth. It's my turn. I am not one of the 2 strongest, so I kind of don't want to push. And also the events that I have in hand, I don't want to push. So this turn, I think I just need to get my food income going. It's, I think, extremely important to make sure to soon get more population going. So I go for 1 upgrade, for another upgrade. And I also go for 1 more coal upgrade, just completing my economy upgrades. I have now quite a nice H2 economy going with a lot of civil actions, so that at least is looking good. But with being stuck on 2 military actions, with having no tactic, with Grozz being in a potentially threatening position, I was a bit worried about my military side. I have still 4 civil actions left after doing all of this, and I will take the revolutionary idea for some additional science, play the patriotism, in order to, after taking the reserves and the urban growth, build another swordsman, making it that I'm one of the 2 strongest. I was fearing that Funestus might just go for another unit and will again get stronger than I do, and because of that I don't copy the fighting man tactic. That was a difficult decision. For the moment I am one of the 2 strongest, so I am prepared for the Cold War, but the 2 additional strength from copying the fighting band tactic could just make it quite a bit harder for Funestus to get again stronger. The problem is that the strategy will be revealed for him, so that always will allow him to just go for the strategy, go for another unit and overtake me. And if I'm willing to copy it, and it also maybe shows a bit more that there is actually something strength related coming. And even further, I don't have a tactic yet, and drawing something like defensive army or just any tactic could just give me some very important options, and so I at the end wasn't willing to copy here, just taking a bunch of yellow cards, playing the patriotism before the age ends, and hoping that I won't get punished by a big war. I draw 2 cards, sadly no tactic. Also the Suez Canal is sadly the last card. If it would have been revealed at my turn, maybe I would have taken it instead of those yellows. Now I was fearing that Grozz, with also having one colony and with having the architecture and enough resources, that he might just go for the Suez Canal and that I sadly won't have access to it. Also, we are now at the beginning of age 3, so we can maybe take a quick look at the overview. Funestus has the culture lead and also a very solid economical position, especially his science production is very strong. He has Newton, the Scientific Cooperation Pact, so the potential to go for a lot of technologies. His weakness is his food income that he still needs to fix, but he is prepared to fix it at the next turn, and then he has a solid economical position and a culture lead, but at least not the biggest culture income, and it's not a big difference that I have to overcome. I also have a solid economy. I have more resource production than Funestus and Grozz do, and also my science production is very solid. I have already now got my food income going. And I also have more culture than at least Grozz has. I am at the moment one of the two strongest, but I was a bit worried about my military side with being stuck on 2 military actions and likely not having a chance to get access to strategy. And then Grotz, despite only being at +1, he maybe still is the best position because he has already some free population lying around that he can still put somewhere. So that population-wise, I think he's looking good. Then his economy is maybe the weakest one. Also, is a bit behind in culture. So if he doesn't find anything to compensate for that, maybe either a military push or maybe investing into something from age 3 very quickly, then he might be a little bit behind because economy-wise, I think I and funestus are a bit ahead, and we also are ahead with the culture saved up. But Grotz's position is definitely not bad. He has those 3 population, and who knows, maybe he has something dangerous already in hand. Now it's funestus' turn. Age 3 starts. He seeds. Still no Cold War, which I was not happy to see. Instead, the arms industry, which sadly doesn't give me any resources. So I wasn't too happy to see this. Funestus gaining 4 additional resources. He will go into the selective breeding, goes for 2 upgrades, takes the team sports to have happy face solution, develops that, and instead of building one, he just takes the rich land, which is an interesting choice. I guess he rather wants to go for the cavalryman instead of building the team spots, which makes it that he's stronger, and that could very well make a difference with the Cold War coming. But on the other hand, at Richland, I mean, he is prepared to go into an early oil, so there's a chance that this Richland might do something for him. He isn't taking the strategy, however, is revealing the Conquistador's tactic and making him even the strongest, so I was fearing that I might miss out on the Cold War. That isn't happening, but maybe something even worse is happening because Grotz is going for a war with technology here. And sadly, he has the tactic that he needs. The defensive army is now at 32 strength. Takes the Suez Canal, finishes the Suez Canal, gets a colony, which is the inhabited territory 2. So his population situation is now even better. Now I think by far the best out of us 3, and he is now at 8 resource income. So sadly, him now being able to get the Suez Canal and him now declaring the war, I think improves his position quite a bit. And I was worried on how I will be able to respond to the strength push during my turn. The good news are at least that there are both strategy and military theory coming down the row, which might help me to get a somewhat decent amount of strength going. At my turn I don't push because I will at least get the second strongest again. I'm making it that after my turn I have again a chance to win the Cold War, which might be especially important now that I will maybe lose a bunch of signs to the war with technology that Grotz has declared. And after trying out some different turns, I came to the conclusion that there is probably the one single best solution. And that involves, first of all, going for the military theory, which is more civil action heavy than going for the strategy, especially because I also have to play the revolutionary idea. But it is probably the stronger technology and just immediately offers more strength. I can develop it. If I had more civil actions, what I could have done is to play the reserves for food and with the frugality increase my population twice, which would allow me to get a population because a card that surprisingly is now actually quite relevant is Shakespeare. As you can see, I have an uprising issue at the moment, but going for Shakespeare actually is quite strong for me here, the one happy face, playing quite big parts. I was unhappy about the war, but at least my leader is doing something for me. And so I can now go for taking and electing Shakespeare. And as said, if I had more civil actions, I could now play reserves, increase my population twice, and then I could build another unit without having to destroy something, but then I wouldn't be able to go for the military theory, and I think I need to reach a certain amount of strength here, which involves the military theory, so I at the end was willing, even though of course I wasn't happy about it, to destroy this mine. At least I'm still at 6 resource income. I can then build a swordsman, I can copy to the fighting band tactic, putting me 28 strength, and I also have 1 civil action left to take this copy of reserves, which is I think just an important card or a strong card to get for 1 civil action. And so I can actually defend surprisingly well. Of course, the Great Wall is doing some heavy lifting here, and the military theory is very important that I have this option. Of course, I still lose either 4 signs or the masonry, but Grozz has the architecture, so I expected to just lose 4 science. And only losing 4 science could be quite important here, because that allows it that even if I lose the science now, I still have just enough science left to develop the cannons at my next turn, which should make it that Grozz, even if he has another H2 war, won't go for it. He could declare it and go for another army, but I can then go for cannons and potentially destroy a bunch of stuff, or also increase my population a bunch of times, build 2 cannons, and copy the defensive army tactics. So with that I should be safe from any wars and also any aggressions. But yeah, I had to destroy this mine, I have to commit even more heavily into swordsmen, so that war is certainly disrupting me, and I was a bit worried about this. I draw 2 cards here, a colonization card as well as the impact of architecture. Funestus seeds and opens the prosperity, giving me 3 additional food. He will take that strategy, takes the mechanized agriculture, develops the strategy, develops the mechanized agriculture. He develops those techs because after doing that he will now switch to a new leader, so now he has still got the additional actions out of Newton. Will switch to Bill Gates, upgrades the lab, has corruption, but has gone up to 12 resource income, and yeah, is looking quite good now. Has the culture lead, Bill Gates, so the strongest resource income, still the strongest science income, has now also fixed his food income and can fix it even more if he likes to with the mechanized agriculture. The one thing that he is maybe lacking is the civil actions, especially with Bill Gates having a lot of civil actions. Is important to be able to invest the stuff nicely that he gets out of Bill Gates, and that at least maybe could pose a bit of a challenge for him. Now Grozz will steal 4 science from me, which definitely hurts, but at least I'm still one of the 2 strongest, so I was hoping that I will win this Cold War. I mean, I'm guaranteed to win it if I'm willing to cede at my next turn. And Grozz is interestingly willing to pay a lot for the multimedia, but I think that's what he needs, something nice to invest into. He has the strength leech, so it isn't really a big danger for him to do this investment. He can still threaten to go for another army. He then takes the endowment and is potentially nicely prepared for flaming if he should still be around at his next turn. Now it's my turn and I really want to get this Cold War out of the deck. The question is, what do I want to push? I could commit to the impact of architecture, but especially with Funestus having Bill Gates, I was not completely certain on whether I will be able to make that work for me, and instead I ceded a wealthy territory because I may be committed more heavily into swordsmen than I would like to. I have drawn an H3 colonization card, and I can maybe just send a fighting band army away plus my cards, which could give me a decent chance to win the wealthy territory, also making maybe up for having lost a mine and now actually being at the weakest resource income after Grozz has gone for Suez and Funestus for Bill Gates. So I felt like this card at least has the potential to be quite helpful for me. The Cold War is revealed, and I do think the 6 additional science is extremely strong for me here. And this turn, there are 3 things that I kinda would like to do. One of them is taking the Air Forces, another one is taking the space flight, and the last one would be to get a bit of culture income going to not be falling too much behind my opponents. Or I mean, Grozz is catching up still, but he is in front of culture income. And yeah, but I can't do all of those 3 things, I can only do 2 of those things. I could take Air Forces, build an opera, I could build an opera, take spaceflight, or I could take spaceflight and Air Forces, but I won't be able to do all 3 of those things. So how important are the Air Forces here is one of the big questions, because maybe I could argue after having gotten hit by this war, maybe I should play it a bit greedily, just taking spaceflight, starting food income, hoping that I will get a second copy of Air Forces. The problem is, if Funestus then is the player having the first one, Grozz has the better chances to get the second one, because Funestus is playing in front of him. And when we take a look at Funestus' civilization, we can also see that he has H2 cavalry and an H2 infantry unit. So if he draws the right tactic here, maybe something like modern army, shock troops or something, and gets the rockets, then together with the Air Forces he can potentially go for some really big strength, also can sacrifice Dimichi Castle. So if I don't take the Air Forces here, I think I could get into danger, and I didn't feel like I'm that bad of a position that I will have to take this risk. And who knows, with air forces, cannons, and copying the defensive army tactic together with the Great Wall, maybe I myself could actually potentially go for war, even though I felt that maybe it's not that realistic, but potentially a possibility. So I felt that at the end, the air forces I can't really skip, even though I kind of felt like maybe I should play it a bit greedily. I then felt like I will just take the air forces and build an opera, get a bit of culture income started. Of course, I don't take the space flight now, but there are some other wonders, but those wonders maybe are a bit tricky. Red Cross I maybe can prepare for, but Empire State Building, United Nations, not really the greatest wonders. So if I don't take the space flight, first of all, I will have a worse wonder. But also, if I don't take the space flight, give Funestus the chance to take it, which is expensive for him, so maybe he wouldn't even go for it, but he has the chance to go for it, and it's certainly not a bad wonder for him. And with me being a 12 plus 7 science, the space flight actually has the potential to end up being quite a decent wonder for me. And with that, I at the end went with the solution of, after increasing my population, taking both air forces and space flight, and then I increase my population, build a warrior to get out of corruption. And which is of course not great, but there is the wealthy territory coming where I maybe then can send some units away again. And I secure myself probably the best wonder. I have the air forces, and at the end I felt that is worth the cost of delaying the opera. Delaying the opera is not only bad because I delay the culture income, but also if now, for example, the second copy of multimedia is available for me at the next turn, and I probably don't have the civil actions to get both an opera and the multimedia going at the next turn, meaning that I again potentially delay culture income. So it is an investment, but at the end I felt like it is worth it, and I felt like if I give spaceflight to Funestus, it starts to get really challenging to maybe finish before him, which it is maybe still now, but I mean I have a strong wonder now, and who knows, maybe I can still actually use Shakespeare for his discounts. I draw some cards here and a war. Now that I have the Air Force, at least it's nice to have the option. Also, the impact of strength could be strong. Funestus takes the democracy, but at least is lacking the science to invest into it immediately. He takes the revolutionary idea and upgrades his farms. There is a Red Cross in the game. I have taken the space flight away, so I think that makes sense. Grozz seeds and opens the wealthy territory, and the decision of seeding that one into the deck works out well immediately. I win it for just 6. Which allows me to win it for just a warrior. I thought about maybe keeping the colonization cards in hand, but at the end I rather wanted to keep 6 population in swordsman, which at least still leaves me a decent amount of strength, and win it for a very cheap price, as I don't know if there are any more colonies coming. I certainly was willing to bid a bit more. I think the cards in an army I was willing to bid. Grotz goes for another multimedia, takes modern infantry, satellites, flaming, and the patriotism. Could have taken the urban growth, but he doesn't have the most resource saved up. I have the air forces now, so I think it's wise that he is playing it a bit carefully here, as otherwise there's a chance he might just get punished. Is not electing flaming yet, and instead keeps Nobel for another turn, but at the next turn he has that much science saved up that he can maybe elect flaming and also start scoring some Nobel prizes. Now it's my turn, and I push the impact of architecture into the deck. It's still not clear how strong it will be for me, and it's still dangerous playing that against Bill Gates, who maybe also will build some arenas, who will maybe go for computers. And after playing out my turn and seeing Funestus' turn, I also felt like, ooh, will that be the correct decision? But then again, I will take this multimedia in hand. I was hoping that with the Shakespeare discount, I will be able to build some buildings, and I was hoping that at least with the culture that I get for seeding, it shouldn't be too bad, and I kind of wanted to move some impacts into the deck that I can maybe play around at the end. The independence declaration is revealed, but Funestus doesn't have any colonies. And this turn I will start to go for the opera, giving me another happy phase so that I don't have any unhappy workers, increasing my population with the frugality, which gets me out of corruption. I take the multimedia. Maybe I don't necessarily need to take it. It's an expensive card to take for Funestus, but there is maybe a chance that he denies it, or maybe if I now take instead, for example, some yellow cards, maybe he also takes some cards and the multimedia could potentially be discarded before my next turn. So I just wanted to have that in hand guaranteed, because I have a lot of resources saved up now with this wealthy territory. And with having that many resources, I might actually be able to, now very late, but better late than never, actually build a bunch of those pairs with Shakespeare at a discount. I still have 2 civil actions left, and I could now even develop and build a multimedia. I really consider that. It gives me +3 science income. It also makes it that I get +5 culture income because I have the first pair with Shakespeare, so it's really lucrative. And my first instinct was to just build this multimedia now. But with funestus getting the air forces, there is still some danger also with getting the rockets. So I have to be a bit careful at least. And also I have drawn this impact of strength, and I felt like with having this impact of strength, I maybe will end up needing this military build-up. Getting potentially 10 additional resources for the military could make it a lot easier to maybe, in addition to building those pairs in the space flight, get, for example, 2 cannons going, copy the defensive army tactic, and hopefully, with being last position, maybe playing the impact of strength into the deck at the last turn. So it first of all makes me safer generally, and with this impact I didn't want to miss out on that card, and I also take the revolutionary idea, at least delaying the development of, delaying the development of the multimedia will maybe make it that I have an easier time of getting some Nobel Prizes going, as I will now develop it at the next turn, and if Grozz switches to a new leader, I can develop that plus one of the other texts to maybe get my first Nobel Prize. I draw some cards, impact of balance and impact of variety. Funestus seeds and opens the immigration. Thanks to building the opera, I don't lose any population, so I was happy to not get punished by that event earlier. Funestus switches to the democracy, which also means that he has to fix his happy faces, and what he also does is going for the computer. Sadly, he can develop both of those technologies with the Scientific Cooperation Pact. He increases his population twice, builds the team sports, builds an additional computer, takes the air forces, doesn't have the time to take any of those yellow cards, but certainly gets some strong stuff going, and that's what I meant when I said that after my turn I thought, ooh, was that a good idea, seeding the impact of architecture? But I was hoping that at my next turn I will be able to maybe go for at least 2 more urban buildings, and hopefully it will still be a fine impact for me. Grozz seeds and opens the strategic territory. So actually another colony that I've seeded earlier. I think at one point I said earlier that I didn't have knowledge about other colonies coming when considering about whether sending an army for the wealthy territory too. But there is the strategic territory coming. I was willing here to send an army and a colonization card, but Funestus is able to win it. At least he has to send 2 riflemen away, which is a somewhat costly price, but those many cards could provide him with some strong impact, so I certainly wasn't too happy about seeing him win this, but at least he has to pay a price. Grozz this turn has a chance to secure himself the second copy of Democracy. It was a nice upgrade for him over the Monarchy. And the additional civil action might even be especially important, because at the end of his turn he will now switch to Fleming, he develops the satellites, again sadly also the Scientific Cooperation Pact doing some big work, he builds another multimedia, takes the reserves, scoring his first Nobel Prize, now really starting some big culture income. And the reserves allows him to be it now at 10 plus 1, 11 plus 4, 15 food at the next turn potentially. So he is now nicely prepared for the Red Cross, and that's also one of the reasons why the democracy, I think, is extremely strong here for him, because civil actions are generally useful, but only because of having that many civil actions, he has now a realistic shot at maybe taking a Red Cross, playing the reserves, and finishing the Red Cross all in one turn. So he prepares himself nicely here. And is now really running away with the culture, while I'm more and more behind. It's my turn now, and I of course had to think about seeding, and it was quite an interesting choice here, because I went through the impacts, and maybe there's one that I could already commit to, like impact of variety, but all of the impacts are not really safe here, and I figure that I don't really want to seed them. Seeding the historic territory is also not that great. I only have 1 colonization card in hand. I kind of want to win the impact of strength, so winning the colony and the impact of strength could be quite challenging and could just distract me from doing other things. And so I thought about just not seeding, or maybe just seeding the impact of variety. And then I also have this terrorism in hand, and I have the lowest culture at the moment. The problem is that this turn I kind of want to get a lot of pairs, or not a lot of pairs, but I want to get a lot of culture production going with at least building 2 urban buildings. And I had also figured out a turn that I was very happy with. The problem is that with this turn, after my turn, am not at the lowest culture when I see the terrorism, at least counting in the 2 culture from the terrorism. The thing is, of course, that there's an impact of top 1 that will, of course, immediately change the culture score, and then the terrorism is immediately the next card revealed. So the question is there a way to play around it that I can maybe make this terrorism work? Because destroying a multimedia from Grozz and maybe a computer from funestus is certainly some nice value, especially with afterwards the impact of architecture coming. So that could be really nice making this terrorism work. So I thought about options. I first thought about options that I would consider strong, about other options that maybe leave me with the lowest culture. And then, of course, I also had to check through the impacts, think about what impact could it be that was seeded by funestus, and I realized that there are a lot of impacts that are somewhat equally strong for me in Grozz, and there's basically none that I thought would make sense for funestus to seed that is a lot better for me. And with that, I was willing to seed the terrorism, even though I don't know, of course, how the culture situation changes exactly. But if there's a bad impact revealed for me, at least it would mean that maybe I can still go for the best turn that I thought about, or that I thought might be the best turn, that I couldn't do when maybe a neutral impact is revealed, because now I have to go for the turn that allows me to win the terrorism. But winning the terrorism, I thought, should offer enough value to play a little bit around it and maybe don't go for the optimal solution here. And so here I actually seeded a terrorism, which is somewhat interesting. I had this card in hand for a long time, and I thought I probably won't use it, but I just kept it in hand, as the other cards also weren't that great. I didn't really see myself going for aggressions, and I was surprised that now there is actually still a nice way to maybe use that card, and use that card very late at the point where I know that I seed it, and then it's immediately the next card, so I have some certainty about that. So I seeded a terrorism into the deck. There's the impact of Wonders revealed. That's even one that gives me +1 against Grozz, but with the turn that I will be going for, I will be able to make sure to not have more culture than Grozz after my turn. I nonetheless, of course, want to increase my culture score, and I do that by going for the multimedia, building one, increasing my population, building an opera, making use out of Shakespeare's discount, going up to 13 culture income. I could, of course, potentially delete some stuff, go for another multimedia, but I have to at least be a bit careful about potential wars, especially Grozz. You can't get the air forces, but I just have to be a bit careful. Funestus could sacrifice with the Michi Castle, and so but what I have to do here kinda is to take those rockets, because with the turn that I thought would be best for myself if I don't seed the terrorism, I wouldn't have taken those rockets, and instead I would have developed the cannons. That, however, would have scored me a Nobel Prize already this turn, and now I have to miss out on the Nobel Prize. And there's also another reason why I think that maybe developing the cannons, not taking the rockets, would be good for me. And but we can maybe take a look at this at the end of my turn. So I take the rockets instead of developing the cannons. I build 2 steps of the space flight, playing the engineering genius, using that before I potentially lose it to the end of the age. Start working on my wonder, which just on one hand to make use out of this engineering genius too, but also because of another reason. And then I play the reserves for food, also making use out of this card before I potentially lose it to the end of the age. And I was looking at this point at my opponent's boards, and both of them have a lot of food saved up. Funestus doesn't have the actions to take and finish Red Cross, but Grozz very well does. And I have thought that it could be very worthwhile here to reveal very few cards from the row. And that's why in the turn that I thought might be the best, developed the cannons and didn't take the rockets, only revealing 2 cards, making it hopefully very less likely that the red cross is revealed before funestus' turn, which maybe forces him into going for the United Nations, which is somewhat costly, and he also maybe wants to do a lot of investments and get out of corruption, meaning that with doing that investment of taking the United Nations, he maybe then also doesn't take that many cards, and maybe then I have even something like a 50-50 chance, or maybe probably a bit less, because maybe Grozz won't reveal 6 cards, probably, so it's not a 50-50 chance, but there's a somewhat realistic chance that maybe the red cross isn't revealed before Grozz's turn, and that it is maybe revealed afterwards, and maybe that could be the variation or the thing that needs to happen in order for me to maybe even have a shot at winning this game, because now that I have built some steps in the space flight and played the reserves for food, I could finish the space flight, maybe even develop 1 or even 2 technologies before finishing it, taking the red cross, then of course letting both of my opponents build a step on it, but then being able to at least get 3 steps, plus the colony bonus, and there are at least a decent amount of colonies in the deck. So that I thought could be a way how I maybe can win this game. And I also really thought if Grozz gets the red cross, that could give him quite a strong push. And funestus, I still thought, still is the culture lead, and I also wasn't really confident about finishing before him. So I really, if possible, would like to avoid that Grozz gets the red cross here. And because of that, I was not too happy now about the solution of taking the rockets, but it's something that I kind of have to do if I don't develop the cannons, because otherwise there's a small chance. Maybe it's not that big. Maybe I could just skip the rockets and take the efficient upgrade here, but maybe there's a small chance that the age could end before my next turn. Grozz has also flaming now. He can take a look at my hand. He knows what options I have, and if he is able to declare war while ending the age before my turn, I lose the cannons. I don't have the rockets in hand, and out of the sudden I can't defend myself. So I have to be a bit careful here. And so I ended up taking the rockets. Maybe I could take the risk and just take the efficient upgrade. Maybe I shouldn't have seeded the terrorism, but I do think that terrorism just offers too much value. And I was willing to miss out on a Nobel Prize this turn, hoping that maybe I would be able to score a Nobel Prize in the next 2 turns, potentially. So that maybe I don't even miss out on culture in total, plus now missing out on culture a bit that I would get now. And now, as you can see, I'm at 62 plus 13, so I'm just 1 tiny bit of culture behind Grozz. So that was quite close with the terrorism. But I will now lower culture and hopefully will be able to destroy some buildings. So that was generally an interesting situation. And yeah, let's see how the game will continue. Oh, and I still do one thing at my turn. I copy to the defensive army tactic, because otherwise I could end up being a bit tight on my military actions when I need to defend against a war, as I, after copying the tactic, only have 3 left. Probably I would still be relatively safe, but I just felt better with having copied it, and also in case the age doesn't end before my next turn and I maybe already want to use the military build-up or maybe build some units, then I can do that and fulfill the tactic while not missing out on any draws. I draw some cards. Impact of population, not the greatest one for me, and I was a bit unhappy to see that sadly the red cross is revealed immediately, so that line or that hope of maybe me getting the red cross at the end doesn't work. What does work is that I win the terrorism, funestus seeds, and the terrorism is revealed immediately, allowing myself to destroy some buildings at the start of my next turn. Now I was very interested to see whether funestus would take the red cross, because he can't take and finish it, so it's not ideal for him, but the question is, does he want to leave that 1 or 2 Grozz? It's probably a tough question for him, and spending all of that food maybe makes it even more challenging for him to build some stuff and prepare for impacts nicely. I was somewhat hoping that he would go for the red cross, because I think it's not the ideal solution for himself, so he would harm himself to harm Grozz, and that of course would be good for me. Let's see if he will go for the red cross, and no, he goes for the United Nations, which probably just works a lot better for him. Maybe he could go for the denial, but maybe Grozz would find some other things to do, even though the red cross I think is just by far the best thing that he can do with the remaining cards in the deck. So maybe it could have been worthwhile, but it would have maybe given then funestus a worse position compared to me. So he goes for some more upgrades. Grozz seeds, takes a look, I think, at funestus hand. And I was a bit unhappy because the impact of architecture is actually revealed. Another reason why taking the rockets is a bit bad is because if the age should end before my next turn, then I lose Shakespeare, and if I don't lose Shakespeare, I can make use out of his bonus again. So I really wasn't too happy about taking those rockets, and maybe I could have just skipped them, but I felt a bit vulnerable if I would do this, and who knows, Grozz might have found a way to just now take 4 cards for 6 actions and still build a bit of strength, and out of the sudden I would have been in danger. But yeah, the impact of architecture I was unhappy to see because I would be able to destroy 2 buildings, and I will actually build some more buildings during my next turn, so not the ideal timing. Grozz can now go for the red Grozz, plays the reserves for food, finishes the red Grozz, takes the oil to maybe then be able to score Nobel Prize at the next turn. At least that means that the age doesn't end, so I can still make use out of Shakespeare. So Shakespeare doing surprisingly good. First, the happy face was extremely crucial, and now I actually do get a bit of his discount going. This turn, I was willing to already commit to the impact of strength. It's a bit risky, but the problem is I kinda have to get it out of my hand now, because Grozz didn't take a look at my hand, meaning at his next turn he will take a look at my military cards, and if he sees the impact of strength, it could end up being a lot harder to win the impact of strength, so I wanted to get this impact into the deck before he can see it and maybe play around it, and I was hoping that with the military build-up that I at least should have a decent chance to win it without sacrificing too much. What I again wasn't too happy to see and was a bit annoyed by is the impact of science. It's of course just a bad impact, but the thing is, after I evaluated terrorism and I do destroy a computer from a funestus and an H3 library from Grozz, I would have actually at least been the second strongest in this impact. So I think I've been a bit unfortunate now with the order of the impacts. Both impacts that would benefit from the terrorism being evaluated are sadly revealed before the terrorism is evaluated, and that cost me some precious points. Now with the impact of science, I was starting to be a bit skeptical about my chances, but at least the impact of strength could end up being good, and the space flight also actually will end up being quite strong, and I will now be able to start quite some strong culture income. So I knew that I wasn't out of the game, but with those setbacks, especially now with the impact of science and me not getting the red cross, I was now a bit skeptical about my chances. I increased my population and I built a multimedia, I disband a swordsman, and I built an opera, making use out of Shakespeare's discount, going up to 21 culture income. I developed the cannons and the organized religion, scoring a Nobel Prize and getting 2 technologies that also will offer me points for the space flight. And I considered also developing H3 techs and stuff and not going for the Nobel Prize with the H2 techs. But I have them already in hand, I don't need to spend civil actions to take them, and so it just felt quite fine to just develop them. I was only afraid that now an impact of technology could be revealed before my next turn, which would be quite bad, because at my next turn I actually plan to develop 3 H3 technologies. So I scored a Nobel Prize. I will go for Chaplin. It's basically the only leader. I mean, it's not the only leader. Marie Curie could work as well, but I will lose the 2 yellow tokens and the happy face from Shakespeare, and then I need the happy face from Chaplin. So I take him, and at the next turn I also will be tight on civil actions with wanting to develop a lot of techs and finishing spaceflight, playing around impact of strength. So it's also kind of mandatory for me to elect Chaplin already and not gain the +1 culture that I would have gotten from keeping Shakespeare. I then take the professional sports, and at the next turn I have enough science, if I play the revolutionary idea, to go for 3 techs, making my spaceflight quite big, scoring another Nobel Prize. And I still have some civil actions left to maybe destroy something, play the military build-up, and hopefully then be able to win the impact of strength. But if I do it like this, and especially if I'm willing to disband a unit of swordsmen, I unfortunately have to copy back to the fighting band tactic. I would have to check again how necessary it was to copy the defensive army tactic at a turn before. I do remember that I thought it was kinda necessary, but maybe after having taken rockets it wasn't. Maybe that was still something that I considered with planning around having cannons. So if that wasn't really necessary to be safe from a war, copying the tactic at a turn before, it might have been a mistake now, because now I have to copy back to not be in danger of an aggression, because Grozz, of course, can take a look at my hand, and if I'm not able to defend, he will just aggress me if he has an aggression. So I score my culture, I draw the impact of progress, which probably will not be worth ceding. I'm at least not too much behind, and while I'm a lot behind Grozz, at least I will still get a strong wonder, while Grozz doesn't. He is missing one resource to go for the Empire State Building. The last round starts. Funestus offers an international tourism to Grozz. Not too great for me, but at least at this late point at the pact it doesn't generate that much culture in total. Funestus develops the air forces, develops the civil service, preparing for some impact, scoring a Nobel Prize, increasing his population twice, building a religion that helps him for the impact of variety, which I very likely will push into the deck at my last turn. And then he finishes the United Nations for 16 points. Let's see if he has an impact to evaluate. He did build up quite a bit of strength, going up to 14-1, which I was a bit worried about, because I have, of course, seen the impact of strength. And the reason why he did this, or at least one of the reasons, is this impact of competition that he is revealing now, which is another not so great impact for me, and also another one that I would improve during my next turn when I will prepare for the impact of strength. So, yeah, another setback, losing 10 points against Funestus, 5 against Grozz, and I was thinking that maybe that are now 2 bad impacts, or I maybe would have needed to hope for a bit of better stuff being revealed. But there are still some impacts coming, and I hopefully will still be able to make the impact of strength work at least. Grozz goes for an oil upgrade, another oil upgrade, so has a lot of resource production going now. That could be an indicator towards the impact of industry. He also goes for a bit more strength, builds an additional farm. That could be an indicator for the impact of harmony. And then he takes the reserves. Now it's my turn. The impact of variety is worth ceding for me. I was afraid of something like impact of technology being revealed. That would be extremely annoying, and then I probably would be out of the game for certain. But I also kind of thought that I need to take the risk, because now I just need to hope that there is no impact revealed, that I will improve during my turn. So I see the impact of variety, impact of industry is revealed, so the impact that Grozz was able to improve at his last turn. At least I don't lose any points against Funestus. I then this turn will develop 2 technologies, scoring Nobel Prize. I will develop a 3rd one. There could still be an impact of technology coming, and it also, of course, gives me points for the space flight, which I will be able to finish now for 32 culture. So that one definitely ended up being quite decent. I can then play the military build-up that I secured myself early on for 10 resources, as well as the reserves, destroying a lab and a swordsman, being able to build a rocket and an air force, and copying back to the defensive army tactic, just having enough military actions and resources to do all of this. And it just puts me in 42 strength. I could have also built a 2nd rockets instead of the air forces for 43, so I had could have gone for a little bit more, but it was quite close. If Funestus would have gone for a bit more strength, I might have not been able to make it work, at least not like that. Maybe I would have done generally have to do it a bit differently, but I wouldn't have to miss out the space flight, as I don't have any more resources to work with. But like this, I at least get a big space flight, I get the Nobel Prize, I still get some decent culture income, and I have at least now the impact of strength, which will score decently. I destroy the lab, because impact of architecture and science are out, and with that it basically doesn't hurt for any impact, destroying the 2nd lab. Before the final impacts, we can see that I am actually at the 2nd position. However, Funestus will of course get the Bill Gates bonus, so that taken into account, I am behind. But then there's the impact of strength, which will give me +7 against Funestus, +14 against Grozz, and all of a sudden things are getting very close. So if the impacts that my opponent seeded are not too bad, or maybe even good for me, there is actually still everything possible here. The first impact that we see here is the impact of harmony. That was kind of to be expected, with Grozz preparing nicely for it during his last turn. Sadly, it's not the greatest impact for me. There's the impact of variety that I have seeded, which at least gives me now +2 against Funestus, and of course I got the culture for seeding. There is now the impact of strength, so out of the sudden I am getting closer to Grozz, and I have now a little bit of a lead before funestus, who of course will still get a Bill Gates bonus. We have the impact of colonies, which gives me another 3 points against funestus, so at this point I was hoping maybe I will at least be able to secure myself actually a second position, which I was already very fine with after seeing the impacts revealed before my last round. But with 9 points being behind Grozz, who knows, maybe there could even be a surprising impact that catapults me in front of him. So let's see what the last impact is. The impact of government, plus 20 for Grozz, plus 21 for me, plus 25 for funestus, who is now 9 points behind me. And now you maybe have to remember how big his Bill Gates bonus will be. If you have watched carefully, maybe you will know it. Otherwise, we will reveal it now. I'm definitely behind Grozz, but let's see if the Bill Gates bonus is enough for funestus to overtake me. He gets a plus 8. And with that, I'm actually just able to not be overtaken, and I at the end secure myself a second position. And overall, it's an extremely close game. Grozz being able to win, congratulations to him. Funestus just missing a tiny culture to at least tie with me, so that was really quite a close and exciting finish, which is also why I wanted to show this game here on the channel, as I'm not showing all of the games of the season. And yeah. I was at the end happy about the second place, because now that I don't win this game, I again have to maybe focus more against fighting against relegation, and especially now finishing before funestus instead of losing against him could really be a big help for my fight against relegation. So I was quite relieved to see that I somehow managed to get that second position. Quite an interesting game with a late terrorism, some late Shakespeare bonus, playing around the red cross, trying to somehow find an out for myself. I mean, it wasn't looking too bad for me, but after I saw the impact of science revealed before the terrorism was revealed, and then the impact of competition, I was getting a bit skeptical, but yeah, I got this big space flight. Taking that, I think, ended up being the right decision, and then I just barely made it. And yeah, if maybe the impact order would have been a bit different, then even a first place might have been possible. If, for example, the impact of science would have been revealed after the terrorism, and maybe also the impact of architecture, but maybe just the impact of science could already result in a 14 culture swing. Maybe the impact of industry would be revealed earlier then. So a first place was actually not out of reach here, and that yeah, is actually quite interesting. Also, funestus going into H3, and also especially after he got Bill Gates, I really thought he might be the player to have the best chances to win this game, and maybe got a bit unlucky with the impacts, maybe just didn't get the time to invest into something nice. He only went into computers, never found the time to invest into something like movies, only got United Nations, which was at least fine with the impact that he evaluated with it. So he did invest into some stuff, but yeah, at the end it was not enough, surprisingly. And Shakespeare actually showing his power with allowing me to go for all of those urban buildings. Alright, so I hope that was an exciting match to watch for you, and now we will also take a quick look at the standings and see how things are after the game has finished, and maybe also some other games, because I plan to only show one more game of the season. And so I actually don't know yet which screenshot I will be showing you now, so let's just find out together. Alright, so I've chosen this screenshot here, where I already have 5 games finished, and sadly, as you can see, I lost another 3-player game. So yeah, my position still not being ideal, but at least I'm not in the relegation zone. 8 points after 5 games finished, not having been able to win a game so far. Cengiz being at 25 points now after 5 games finished, so he was able to win another 3-player game. That was actually the 3-player game that I was involved in. So Cengiz now just playing a very strong season, and now it's very, very likely that he will be the one to win it. Maybe the best chances to overtake him has actually Grozz, who is at the second last position at the moment, but is the only player with only 3 games finished, so he just still has a lot of potential to score some points. And also Ipogi with 2 wins could still gather the amount of points that would be needed to overtake Cengiz, so his win isn't certain yet, but he is in a good position. Then Ipogi, also a solid amount of points, has maybe good chances to finish in the medal zone. And yeah, then starting with MWI, then all the players, maybe for Grozz it will depend, of course, how the next games will be going. If he gets good results, he maybe can also orientate himself upwards. But apart from him, MWI, Arne, and Funestus are probably the ones who have to be careful about not getting relegated. I have only 2 games left. I definitely need to score some points. So yeah, in the last game that we are taking a look at, we will see if I will manage to stay in the league, or if I, with some further bad results, sadly have to say bye to the Grandmaster division after having played again there for 1 season. Alright, so with that we are at the end of the video. I hope it was an exciting match for you to watch. Let me know your opinion in the comments, and then I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.